one message from Starfleet coming in on secured channel.
You're listening to Captains Logs and Lightsabers, part of the Geek News Now podcast network.
Hey, welcome to Captains Logs and Lightsabers. This is the podcast on the Geek News Now network that discusses both Star Trek and Star Wars in the same show. My name is Jonathan. I am just one of the hosts on this show. Allow me to introduce my co-host, Chris. How's it going, Chris?
I'm good. How are you doing today?
Good.
Good. I'm ready to get talking when you are.
All right, man. We're going to keep it nice and short and simple because we're not too far off the heels of our previous episode where you kind of got the background of what Chris and I had been doing over the course of the past several months while we were on hiatus. If you're new to Captains Logs and Lightsabers, Chris and I are both lifelong Star Trek and Star Wars geeks, and we love to talk about both. So we do on a somewhat regular basis. So without further ado, let's get started. We start each and every episode with How Did You Geek This Week? It's a little segment where Chris and I get to talk about one or two things that we did that was geeky outside of Star Trek and Star Wars. So Chris, why don't you kick us off?
All right. Well, for my How Did I Geek This Week, really, it wasn't any specific nerd activity. It kind of goes along with my Goodwill obsession. I went to, there's this outlet store not too far from where I work, and you can instead of paying regular price for it, you pay by the pound. It's all basically, I call it the Goodwill of Goodwills because it's like a junk store. It's like dumpster diving. So I found two large Grogu pillows that are about maybe 2 foot apiece. One day and one the very next day, and one with a tag on it. And they're wonderful. They're nice and big. They're squishy, and they're going to be great little collector's items. So I got that. Also, I ended up finding an Atari flashback that's usually like $50.
Mm-hmm.
It's still in good condition, and I got it for $7.
Oh, that's fantastic. Wow.
Yeah, it's got 40 different Atari games built into it. I just got to hook it up and see, really hope and see if it works. But it's all in good shape, so I'm hoping it does. I also found you remember the Furbies from the 90s?
Of course.
Okay. So I never understood the Furbies, but I found one the last time I went to Goodwill, and it was actually a Star Wars one. It was dressed as Chewbacca. So I did some research yesterday after I got it working, and they actually called it Furbacca. And it was from, and it was from 2015, I guess right around the time that The Force Awakens came out. So I put batteries in it, and the sucker works. I have no idea how to use it. It's weird. So I tried finding the directions online. I haven't had any luck yet, so I'm going to keep going. But it talks in Wookiee, that growling that Chewbacca does. And after a while, it hums the Imperial March theme, which is really out of nowhere. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, and it's got digital eyes, which is really weird. So I'm going to try to see if I can figure out how to work it. Maybe I can talk about it in a future episode.
Yeah, I'm sure you can. I'm sure you can find a YouTube video on it.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be something. So, but that was how I geeked this week by spending a ton of money. How about you?
Nice. Mine, I guess, is kind of sort of related to yours in the video gaming sense. So I last year I was fortunate enough at the end of the year to pick up a PlayStation 5, and cool. I grabbed a few games and have been playing it, but I recently got an email from PlayStation offering me 25% off the PlayStation Plus online membership, which they have 3 tiers of that membership now. And I got the premium tier, which is normally $120 for a whole year. I was able to get it for like $80 some. And then I had a $50 a $50 PlayStation Store gift card that I had gotten from somewhere. And so basically I paid like $30 some for the full year of this PlayStation Plus service. And it's kind of like Netflix where, you can download a collection of games and play them. And they rotate every so often, like new games come in, games go out, and so on and so forth. I started playing this game that I've had my eye on for quite some time. It's called Ghost of Tsushima, and it's this period samurai game where you are a samurai warrior, and you basically have to employ kind of dirty tactics, but the idea is that you're trying to save the island that you live on, Tsushima, from the Mongols invading and trying to take over. And it takes place, in the probably like the 1600s, so it's feudal Japan. It's very atmospheric. It's gorgeous. It's a beautiful game, and it's really cool, like how they've really played out the combat system, and it feels like you're in an actual sword fight. It's really cool.
Sure. Well, that sounds really interesting. How often have you gotten to play it?
I've played probably 20 hours so far, because I usually just play in the mornings before work for a little bit. So
Sure.
I haven't really gotten much beyond like the first maybe 6 or 7 story missions, but I'm really excited to see how it plays out. I'm just having fun riding around on my horse and just exploring and discovering new places and stuff.
Oh, that's really cool. Yeah, it's like being in your own little virtual world that you get to explore. Cool. I'd like to add just one more last little thing about mine. Last show, we talked about the new Star Trek figures coming out from Playmates Toys. Well, I finally got one. I found one, got it.
Nice.
So I found Lieutenant Commander Data. And like I said in the last episode, that was the very first figure I opened 30 years ago in 1992. So it's going to be the first one I open. I haven't opened it yet. I'm just waiting for the right moment. But it actually really impressed me. I really like the 5-inch size. The little accessories seem really, really nice and on par with what came before. I'm waiting to see if the figure stand is as good as they were 30 years ago. But the mold looks really great. And hopefully when I finally open it, I can talk to you guys a little bit more about the quality of it, its articulation, things like that.
So you have just confirmed for our audience that you are the open the packages toy collector kind of person, huh?
Absolutely, I am. I have to feel my stuff. It's like Picard in First Contact when he had to touch the Phoenix and was teaching Data about that. I need that textile kind of connection with my collectibles.
Right. Yeah, I open some. I keep some sealed. I'm not really. I don't really have that tactile need. But I do have a Boba Fett pop vinyl figure that I keep on my desk in the office where I record the podcast. So
nice, sweet.
Yeah. So without further ado, let's get into the real meat of the podcast. We're going to kick it off here with the news.
Move the ship out of the asteroid field so that we can send a clear transmission.
Captain, incoming message.
Come closer, I have good news.
So the first bit of news content that I was able to find for us is we kind of have been hearing rumors about this for quite some time, but who is going to be playing the role of Ezra Bridger in the Ahsoka series that we're getting? Who is going to be the actor that plays the live action version of Ezra from Star Wars Rebels? And it seems like we finally have our answer. There was a rumor for quite a while that an actor who's kind of known for his role on the CW show iZombie, Raul Coley, he was rumored for a very long time to be playing, or at least in contention for the role of Ezra. But we found out in September that, and this has been confirmed by multiple sources, that the actor that's going to be taking on the role is Iman Esfandi. I am not familiar with, honestly, any of his work, but I saw a press photo of him, and he absolutely looks 100% like Ezra. So I'm kind of excited for that. What do you think?
I'm with you 100%. Like you said, I'm not familiar with this individual's line of work, but just looking at the picture, I said the same thing. They nailed this one, which is kind of nice, because going with the animated and the live action people that they've hired for Star Wars in the past, they never always seem to fit. Like every time I would picture Ahsoka, I thought I would think of the young lady who voiced her. Was it Ashley Eckstein?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So I always assumed that she would be the one to play the part, so when they cast, what's her name?
Rosario Dawson.
When they cast Rosario Dawson, it felt off to me at first. It took time for it to grow on me. Same thing with Obi-Wan Kenobi with the Grand Inquisitor. He felt very different compared to the way he looked in Star Wars Rebels. Same with the fifth brother. He seemed a little bit off too. But it just took a little time for it to grow on me. But this one, I think, is just going to be nailed right from the get-go.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I really think they nailed the casting, at least for the visual look. I might have to try to track down some of the stuff that he's been in just to get an idea of his, his delivery as an actor, how he approaches a role. But yeah, I'm really very excited for the show. And, we had previously learned that another big casting of Sabine Wren had been made, several months prior to hearing about Eman Esfandi. So I'm getting even more and more excited for the show now that, that everything is winding down. And, to kind of refresh our listeners or those not familiar with Star Wars Rebels and how it ended, in the series finale of the show, Ezra Bridger disappeared along with Grand Admiral Thrawn. It basically, and then we get the impression that they haven't been heard from for quite a few years. At least 5 or 10 years we haven't heard from Ezra or Thrawn. And then we got a little Easter egg in season 2 of The Mandalorian when we met Ahsoka, and she asked about Grand Admiral Thrawn and where he is. So obviously Thrawn has made his presence known again to the galaxy. So where is Ezra? I'm really excited to see how that all plays out. So yeah, I'm excited for the show even more now.
Definitely, me too. When is Ahsoka supposed to be coming out? Did they set a date yet?
Sometime next year is all we know.
Okay. Well, it's something to look forward to. Happy New Year for us.
Right? Yeah. Absolutely. Mm-hmm. So our next bit of news, this is going to be a very Star Wars heavy episode, folks, so buckle up. Pretty much all Star Wars, because I think our last episode was pretty much all Star Trek, aside from our little catch-up. So
exactly,
yeah.
Yes.
So yeah, buckle up, folks. Here we go. The next bit of news that we have to talk about is the premiere of the Bad Batch Season 2. Now, this show was originally set to start in the fall of 2022. It got pushed back to, I believe, January 4th is our premiere. And from what we understand about what Lucasfilm has told us about the show so far, that there's been quite a few months that have passed since everything that happened on Kamino at the end of the Bad Batch Season 1. So the crew is out trying to continue finding their place in the galaxy after the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire. We're going to get some run-ins with familiar faces and friends and foes. We're going to get hopefully a little bit more of the mercenary missions, kind of like A-Team in space, that we kind of were hoping, I don't know about you, but I was kind of hoping that was the direction that was going to go in season 1, but it really didn't feel like that in the end. So maybe we're going to get more along those lines and how their missions feed into the Rising Rebellion, perhaps. I don't know.
Sure.
The teaser trailer that they released for the show showed us the return of Ian McDiarmid as Emperor Palpatine. We got a bunch of glimpses at some pretty cool action scenes. One of them, featuring our favorite clone, Omega, of course. Everybody loves Omega. And if you don't, I have words for you.
Yes.
All right. Did you have a chance to take a look at the trailer for the Bad Batch yet, Chris?
Yes, I watched it a couple times. I agree with you about the A-Team vibe that they're probably going to be going for. I'm really excited more than anything. I've always been curious about the Imperial Senate. And so just to see that Emperor Palpatine's going to be there, and we're going to see a little bit of the Senate, and maybe even see how Palpatine interacts with the Senate differently from when it was the Republic, that's something I'm really looking forward to. I'm also trying to figure out and I'm very excited about where they left off at the end of season 1 with the Kaminoan being taken by the Empire. I can't remember the name of the place they went to. I know it's in Star Wars lore, but what are they going to do with this Kamino, and how's it going to impact, cloning it, what they're known for? Maybe it's going to tie in with the Rise of Skywalker, with how Palpatine ended up having a clone body after he died in Return of the Jedi. So those are the parts that I'm really excited about.
Yeah, I'm interested to see what kind of lore we get, because I'm hoping that this, kind of like how the Clone Wars built the lore around that whole tease that we got in the original Star Wars, and how it built all of that and really made the prequel trilogy feel like a cohesive product, with the inclusion of the Clone Wars animated show. I'm really hoping that that's what we get to bridge that gap between the fall of the Republic and the first victory of the Rebel Alliance.
Yes, definitely. It's going to be really cool. I didn't realize that they pushed it back to January. That was news to me today, just when when we talked. So
yeah.
I was like, I thought it was coming out at the end of this month. I was like, yes, I was like, but I guess we just have to wait. It's just one of those things. Part of being a fan, we always have to wait and have things dragged out.
Right. And then, then the season will be so good and we'll be upset that it's over and we'll want more faster. So, we'll never be satisfied.
Exactly.
All right. We got 2 more news items. So we'll try to get through these as quickly as possible because I'm really looking forward to talking about Andor, which is something that we didn't get a chance to discuss last week since we had really gone down a couple rabbit holes in our discussion at our last episode. So I guess, I had heard that, that Dave Filoni had really been a huge fan of the animation style and how the Bad Batch took the style that we see in the Clone Wars and really, really added to it and gave us a lot more better looking character models and the backgrounds and everything looked so much better than it did in the Clone Wars, even though it was the same animation style. Dave Filoni wanted the team at Lucasfilm Animation to work on another project that he'd been wanting to do for some time called Tales of the Jedi. And this is based on a very, very popular comic series that came out before Marvel regained the Star Wars license to make comics. Dark Horse had it, and Tales of the Jedi was one of their biggest and most popular series of comics. So, it kind of takes that idea and it's giving us, I think, 6 episodes. So it's a limited series, 20-minute episodes apiece, but we're getting the story of how Ahsoka Tano was discovered by Plo Koon and brought to the Jedi Temple to become a Jedi and start her training as a youngling and such. So, of course, this is right up my alley, seeing young Ahsoka and hearing Ashley Eckstein coming back to voice her. So I'm really excited about that. But, also in these 6 episodes, we're going to be getting some stories about Count Dooku and how Count Dooku started to become disillusioned with the Jedi Order and start to be tempted then by the dark side and to start the separatist movement, which, kicks off the Clone Wars. So I'm really excited about this. And then, as a bonus on top of both of those awesome things, we get the return of Qui-Gon Jinn himself, Liam Neeson, voicing the character of Qui-Gon Jinn in Tales of the Jedi. So I'm really geeking out about this. I don't know if you can tell, but what do you think, Chris?
I agree with you 100%. Anytime we can see origin stories of our favorite characters, that's always a bonus and a plus. Definitely, I'm most excited about the Count Dooku arc and seeing what happened, why he decided to go from Jedi to Sith and help spearhead the Clone Wars along with Emperor Palpatine. It's going to be really exciting. And I knew from the get-go that you'd be excited about the Ahsoka story. I know that she's one of your favorites, if not your absolute favorite Star Wars character of all time. As a matter of fact, last year I actually bought an Ahsoka Tano Cocoa mug, and I had you in mind when I bought it. I was like, you know what? I got to show him this sometime. I haven't used it yet, so maybe on its maiden voyage with Coco, I'll take pictures or something.
I would appreciate that for sure.
Yeah, and then Qui-Gon Jinn, I think I read something recently about because he appeared at the end of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and I think if I remember correctly, I think he said he couldn't imagine anybody else playing or voicing his character. So that's, I really enjoy when an actor or an actress really embraces their character and what kind of legacy that it's left. So it shows they're different than a typical actor who just bounces from one job to another. When, it's just they reflect back and they say, you know what, I did something. I made an impact on society in some way. And I think that's really great that he values the character that much that he was like, who cares if anybody else takes it? It's just that's something I did 20 some years ago, So did you see any of that? Did you hear about that at all when he said that?
No, I don't think, I think I missed that interview completely. And that's kind of shocking because I know the last real thing that I had heard from Liam Neeson, regarding Star Wars before we got him in Obi-Wan, of course. But he was obviously he was teasing the fans, saying that he didn't think that animation was a suitable place for him to provide his talents. And he said he might consider appearing as Qui-Gon in a live action project. And then, of course, we get the news that he's going to be voicing Qui-Gon for Tales of the Jedi. Because of course, he was pulling everyone's leg. And then we got him in Obi-Wan. So we get both.
Yeah, exactly. I can't remember where I read it. I think it was just a random story when I was circling through Facebook and I came across it. So I don't know, but either way, I just thought that was really cool. So,
yeah,
be nice to see him back.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So let's hit the last couple news stories really, really quickly. We're going to talk about James Earl Jones a little bit, talking about a character or an actor who has certainly left a legacy, not only on Star Wars, but in just about everything that he's done, from Broadway to music and everything. He has done so much for the arts community. And, he recently announced that he was retiring as the voice of Darth Vader, and that he had sold the rights to the voice of Darth Vader back to Lucasfilm, as well as a company called Respeecher Technologies. For a lot of people who really don't follow all of the news that comes out of Star Wars and just really watches the content, they might not really know what Respeecher Technologies is. And it was used pretty well, to pretty good effect, I think, in The Mandalorian Season 2 and the Book of Boba Fett with Luke Skywalker, how Mark Hamill had recorded the dialogue, and then Respeecher had come in using voice patterns and existing dialogue that had already been recorded and in archives to basically use Mark Hamill's voice and the technology and AI speech and all of that to make Mark Hamill's recorded dialogue at 70 years old sound like he was in his 20s again. So that is what we can expect now for the future for anything that features Darth Vader. Is they're going to use all the hours and hours and hours of dialogue that James Earl Jones has recorded over the past 50. No, shoot, he's been acting for 70 years now. So they're able to use all of that dialogue to make new projects, and record new lines using AI speech technology to recreate the voice of Darth Vader in the future. And I think that's pretty incredible. It brings up some moral implications, of course. You can't really talk about how cool it is without really talking about the implications. But what do you think, Chris?
I think it's amazing what technology can do nowadays. Lucasfilm just continues to amaze me in terms of being able to use the digital de-aging technology or reuse the faces of characters who have passed away. I think it's going to be wonderful that James Earl Jones, even if it's synthetic, it's still his voice. It's all pieced together. His soul will always be in that voice, no matter what happens moving forward. So I think that's a wonderful thing. I agree with the morality of what you're talking about. I think as long as the actor, before he or she passes away, now at this point actually gives their permission to do so, I think it would be okay. I know with Carrie Fisher, things like that were a little different or Peter Cushing, they passed away many years ago at this point, so they weren't able to really give their consent. But I guess if the family gives the consent, and with their blessing, I guess it would be okay. But, in this case, I think James Earl Jones gave the stamp of approval. Mark Hamill's given his stamp of approval. So I think with them moving forward, I think it should be okay.
Yeah, I think you're right. I just don't want to see that technology being used inappropriately, to kind of like deep fakes, in the audio version of a deep fake. I don't want that to ever be the use of the technology. And I think as long as this Respeecher Technologies controls the technology that they use and keeps it private, or keeps it proprietary, I guess is the better word, and not letting it leak, that would certainly cut back on that. So hopefully they have a lot of trademarks on that technology.
Don't get technical with me.
Logic is the beginning of wisdom, Valeris, not the end.
The Jedi uses the Force for knowledge and defense.
We're going to jump right into our discussion on Andor. at this point, we have had 5 total episodes of Andor released, including the 3-episode premiere that we got in September. Also, since then we've had weekly releases of 2 more episodes 4 and 5. And you can kind of see how this show's really taking shape as essentially it's like every 3-episode block is kind of its own story. It has beginning, middle, end, and then, with episode 4 and 5, it kind of started a new story, and we have a beginning chapter and a middle chapter. Did you kind of get that vibe as well, Chris?
Yes, absolutely. With the way the storytelling was, yes.
Yeah. So we're going to take this kind of in the way that Andor has, and we're going to talk about the first 3 episodes as kind of a complete set of discussion, and then we'll talk about episodes 4 and 5 later, rather than trying to recap each individual episode. We'll talk about them in chunks. So I want to break this discussion down into kind of 3 different segments, if that's okay with you, Chris. I kind of want to focus on the characters, the story elements, and then music, sound design, and kind of all of the other stuff, the cinematography, the visuals, kind of talk about that at the end. So let's talk a little bit about Cassian. So, Cassian, we find out, the first time we see him in episode 1 of the series, we see him running down this long, like, gangway type thing towards a city in the background. And, he runs into some corporate sector security officers and has, an unfortunate incident where, he injures one of them, kills, he gets into a fight with them, and one of them dies accidentally, and then he has to shoot the other. That kind of sets off, into motion some of the other characters. So what do you think about the first time that we meet Cassian in Andor? Let me kind of jump in really quick and say it very similarly reminds me of how we first met Cassian in Rogue One. We see him having to make a difficult decision. And I thought that was brilliant how the first time we meet Cassian in Andor, it kind of rhymes like poetry.
Oh, absolutely. Definitely. There was definitely symbology of what we've already seen and where the origin of that came from. So it shows you that Cassian is willing to do whatever it takes to survive and complete whatever mission he's going on. So and I think that's going to be a very important piece that we'll continue to see with Cassian going on. It's interesting seeing him it's almost like he kind of doesn't have like a moral lens like he does in Rogue One, where, he's fighting for the survival of the galaxy. And we're seeing what he's like pre-rebellion. And it seems like he's almost completely lost. Like he just almost exists is kind of a way I kind of looking at it. The only thing that seemed to really be motivating him was trying to find his sister. There seems to be a real big backstory behind all of that, which we saw through the episode as the episodes as it went on, and we learned a little bit about his history. So yeah, you're right about the symbology at the beginning of the episodes.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just a lot of people are saying how they don't feel like this, or how Andor doesn't feel like Star Wars to them. And it's very, very subtle. Right? Just like, we don't get a lot of in-your-face stuff that we're used to with Star Wars. We're getting a completely different flavor. We're seeing some smaller characters. We're not really, how they are influencing the greater events that are happening in the galaxy. We're not with the big players. We haven't seen really any characters other than Mon Mothma, who's like, her, it's I kind of like how this is, very tangentially relevant to the greater galaxy, but it's important. It's going to build to a critical linchpin, of course.
Oh, absolutely. And you can definitely tell they're making this for more of like an adult, mature audience. I mean, whenever you watch any other Star Wars in the past, you never think about, I'll just say it, sex. All right. And in the very beginning of the first episode, they were in a brothel. looking for his sister, and those two security guards said, "Hey, we were here first."
Yeah.
I mean, it was just it didn't fit the usual Star Wars theme.
Yes.
So it was kind of odd. And then in the next episode, you see what's her name? Bix Colleen? Is that her name?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, she and her boyfriend Timmy, they clearly had sex off screen. I mean, you never saw Anakin wake up next to a naked Padme, in the prequels. I mean, they were in bed together, but that was about it. But I mean, it just, you can tell they're definitely going for some different kind of theme here.
Yeah.
And also, I agree with you with the subtleness of the Empire and Imperial stuff. They were just mentioned sporadically here or there, and that's about it.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw these other corporate soldiers who really, I'll be honest, didn't make any sense to me. I didn't know what they were doing. I know they worked for the Empire, but
they do. Yeah. So basically, the Empire has announced that it has taken over, the planet, right? But the Empire hasn't. They're basically just observing or ruling the planet from afar. They're not a heavy presence. You don't have the you don't have the stormtroopers, you don't have the Imperial officers. You have these corpos, these basically rent-a-cops, that are basically enforcing the Empire's rules on the planet before before the Empire feels they have to get involved.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so that gives me more of an idea of what they really stood for. I knew that they were enforcing the Imperial laws, but I didn't know. I think the fact that you called them rent-a-cops was the perfect way to describe them, because I couldn't figure out like what their real role was, and on what they were really doing on the planet. Did they really specify what they're doing on Morlana 1?
No, not really. I don't really know anything. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just something that I missed, and I've watched the episodes twice. I don't know if they ever really revealed what their intentions are. I think it's just classic Imperial, just trying to enforce their will.
Okay, that makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay. So what do you think about, I guess, Cassian's adopted mother, Marva? What did you think of her character, played by everyone's favorite horrible aunt, Aunt Petunia from Harry Potter, Fiona Shaw herself? I thought that, I mean, of course, I knew that she was in it, so I was excited to see what she would bring to the character she played, and I'm happy. I love her attitude, and how she basically, she raised Cassian, but she doesn't pull punches with him either.
Right. So I thought she did a wonderful job in the role. She was the strong, fierce, protective mother. Obviously, when she got him on board the ship on his home planet, I think she took him basically to save his life. She thought he was going to be left there to die. So she took him and raised him. I don't know if she led him into the lifestyle that he has now or not, but her acting style was wonderful. I mean, you could feel the intensity of her love for him and wanting to protect him and his Kenari history. I don't know. I hope we see a little bit more of her as the series goes on. I think there's more to her than we really know at this point. Just as a side note, too, I didn't realize that she was Aunt Petunia. And that never crossed my mind. You know where I remember her? Yeah. You know where I remember her from? 1993 Super Mario Brothers, the movie.
Wow, what a deep cut, man.
Yeah. I mean, I knew that I knew somewhere deep down that she was in Harry Potter, but when I first saw her, my mind went to Super Mario Brothers for some reason. I don't know why. But
I can't even tell you the last time I've seen that movie other than 1993. Yeah.
It was an interesting movie. Very different.
That's one adjective to describe it. I don't know.
Exactly. But she's definitely a good actress, and I'm hoping that we see a little bit more of her in the next 7 episodes left. We get a little bit more of a history about her. Her character. So was she some sort of like mercenary or like salvage person, or was she like working for some group?
I have no idea. I didn't discern that from I don't know if she was, working, if she worked for the Republic, if she was a private citizen, if she works for the Empire and took pity. I don't know. I mean, I don't think she worked for the Empire because she's actively working against the Empire, when we see her in Andor in the present time, because she's the one that organizes the meeting with Luthen, which, sets off the next episode arc. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I have no idea where her loyalties lie, prior, when she first found Cassian.
Right. Yeah. And, I'll be honest with you, the fact that I've been having a hard time kind of understanding everything that's been going on in the episodes, it kind of gets me confused a little bit about the characters and what their motives and things like that are. So I'm going to have to, I think, I actually kind of like that they made it so different like that, because it's going to make us want to go back and look for different points and figure different things out instead of just watching it and being like, oh, this was a great episode. Now we have to go back and pick at things.
Right. Yeah. And I'm kind of looking forward to that. I want to see the subtle Star Wars stuff that they've included, because, Tony Gilroy is writing a lot of the episodes of Andor. And his son is writing some episodes as well. And I know that, Tony Gilroy isn't a huge Star Wars fan, but he definitely felt like Star Wars had to be elevated, which is why he took on Andor, I think. But that's beside the point. I mean, I don't think Tony Gilroy is quite as good as he thinks he is, but that's another discussion for another day. I like the show. Is it my favorite Star Wars? No, but I do enjoy it. Let's talk a little bit about, we got another interesting droid character, huh?
Definitely.
In B2, is it B2EM0 or is it B2EMO? Like, I don't know.
That is a very good question. I just kept hearing him being referred to as B.
Yeah,
That's all. I didn't even know he had a longer name. I assumed he did, but I had no clue what it was.
You know what? I'm calling him B2 Emo. I don't care.
That works for me.
I think, I mean, he's an interesting character. He kind of reminds me of Wall-E.
Okay.
Do you get that vibe too?
A little bit. Just a little bit.
He doesn't have the little tank treads, but just the square shape of him is very, very Wall-E like.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I can't figure out what his personality is yet. But you know what really stuck out with that character? When he did talk a little bit, do you remember the old Buck Rogers from the 80s?
A little bit. I mean, obviously, George Lucas was very inspired by Buck Rogers, the serials that he watched growing up. And, of course, it came back in the 80s as well. But, by then, Star Wars had already made its impact on the world. But
right.
Yeah. So no, I don't remember too much about it because it kind of just it really wasn't something that was on my radar as a kid, I guess.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I was born in 1980, so I never got to really watch it either, but there's a character on the show, a little robot character named Tweaky or something to that effect. And a lot of the stuttering that B did in this episode was very similar to the way that character in Buck Rogers would stutter.
Okay.
With the voice. I just thought that was an interesting little connection. I wonder if they did that on purpose or not.
I don't think there's anything that isn't done on purpose in Star Wars, if I'm being perfectly honest. So you're probably right, and it would make sense because, with as much as George Lucas was inspired by Buck Rogers of the 30s and 40s, these modern filmmakers are inspired by Buck Rogers of the 80s. So yeah, again, it's poetry. It rhymes, right?
Definitely. Absolutely.
That is the hook of Star Wars, is that the connections and how everything rhymes like poetry.
Right.
Didn't really get a whole lot of him in episode 3, but we finally got to meet Luthen, played by Stellan Skarsgård, who is quite a phenomenal and accomplished actor in his own right, bringing some interesting color to Star Wars. I really thought the way that they introduced him as the buyer for the Star Path. And that was, basically the whole idea behind the Star Path sale was to introduce Cassian to Luthen to get involved in the Rebel Alliance mission, at least, as a mercenary, of course, being paid. But I thought it was a cool introduction, to the character. We got to see him kicking some major ass with Cassian.
Yes.
in that shootout at the end, which of course got a bunch of corpos killed, since the head or the lieutenant or sergeant or whatever he is, Cyril, would not just listen to his superior and let it go. Obviously we found that, that his obsession with tracking down Cassian led to quite a few needless deaths at the hands of Luthen and Cassian. So, what did you think of our introduction of Luthen?
I think that he's definitely going to be a character with a rich history that I'm hoping that we're going to get to explore in flashbacks in some of the future episodes, see kind of how he got involved with the fledgling Rebel Alliance, what his relationship with what Mon Mothma was like, where their history came from. We saw the scene where they were going back and forth about things, and she's talking about how she's feeling like she's being watched and, unsafe. And I don't know. I guess I haven't really seen a whole lot of him yet to really know what he's about at this point. So I will say I liked his ship. It kind of reminded me of a souped up Millennium Falcon.
Right.
I assume it's Corellian.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The design. The cockpit itself gave it away, and so did some of the hallway. The way the design was. Yeah,
it's very much a YT. It looks like a YT series. Maybe not the same series as the Millennium Falcon, but definitely that same design language.
Right. Exactly. Now, help me figure this part out. So that the Star Path is that box that Cassian had, right?
Correct.
With the Imperial logo?
Yes.
Okay, and if I remember correctly from watching the episodes, they basically said that was to help track Imperial ships?
Essentially. It almost sounds like it's, to me, it seems like it might be another Easter egg. Since this takes place several years prior to the events of Rogue One, I wouldn't be surprised if that is one of the Empire's early attempts at hyperspace tracking. And because if you remember, that's kind of a thread that has been built on and really starting to be weaved into the existing stories of Star Wars and what the Empire was doing, with them, obviously the hyperspace tracking really made its big debut in The Last Jedi, because the Empire was able to track the New Republic, the Resistance ships through hyperspace. And then before we saw that whole plot line in The Last Jedi, there was a mention whenever in Rogue One, whenever they were in the Imperial facility looking for the Death Star plans, there was a little thing about hyperspace tracking in there too. So it's kind of cool to see that maybe this Star Path is one of the first attempts at that.
That'll be interesting to see. And it is one thing that the current Star Wars runners are doing, is they're weaving Easter eggs in and out of stuff and connecting everything very nice and neat. So kudos to them for trying to keep a good linear story going on and seeing how everything fits together all the way from the prequel era all the way up to the end of the sequels. It's cool. It's really cool and neat.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've kind of really broken down the first 3 episodes pretty well. Let's kind of move on to episodes 4 and 5. And, I think our discussion might have weaved a little bit of the stuff that we saw in 4 and 5 into the first bit, but for the most part, our discussion was pretty much centered around the first 3 episodes. Episodes 4 and 5, we're starting to, we see a lot more of the moving and shaking on Coruscant. We get to meet Mon Mothma's husband and daughter for the first time in those 2 episodes. We, of course, we meet the ground assault crew on Aldhani. And then, of course, we're introduced to Cyril's mother, who is quite an interesting character all of her own. So let's kind of talk a little bit more about Luthen in episode 4 and 5. We got a little bit more background on his character and how he's kind of leading 2 lives himself. He's the shopkeeper in that really fancy antiquities shop on Coruscant. He puts on his little wig and his purple robe and looks super fancy and we saw him just prior in episode 3. He was the the boots on the ground involved in the fledgling Rebel Alliance stuff.
Yes.
I thought it was great to see that side of his character. Him in his dual role there.
Right.
And how, he and Mon Mothma are kind of working together, at the Coruscant level. They are they're the ones with the funding, that's supporting the Rebel Alliance. I think that's pretty darn cool.
Yeah. It'll be, like I said earlier, I think it's going to be interesting to see how they ended up meeting and a little bit more of how their relationship gels at this point. I'd be honest with you about seeing Mon Mothma with a family. I never thought she had a family.
Right.
I never knew she was married or had a daughter. I just always thought it was her.
Well, fun little Star Wars fact. She did have a daughter in the old expanded universe, in the old EU, and they actually preserved the name for the Andor series. It's the daughter has the same name in the show as she did in the EU.
Is it Leda?
I think something like that. I am having a really hard time keeping track of some of the character names in this show.
Exactly.
I mean, people say it doesn't feel like Star Wars, but some of these names are impossible to remember.
I know. Well, I was surprised when I heard the name, and I think I saw it written somewhere online, and it's Leida, and I thought that was interesting. It was basically Leia with a D in it. And I didn't know if there was some symbology to that, if there was a reason for that, or I'm just kind of picking at straws here.
I think the connection is that it's the same name as the daughter had in the old expanded universe. I think that's the connection. If I'm being perfectly honest.
No, that makes sense. So what do you think of the husband?
I don't think he's going to survive this show.
No, there's something slimy about him. Just in the look and the way he talks, he's going to end up like betraying her somehow, like to the Empire or something.
Oh, I think he's going to learn of her involvement, and I think we may see a more brutal side of Mon Mothma, one who's not afraid to get her hands dirty, because that is anything but the character that she's portrayed, thus far.
Yes.
She's always kind of portrayed as the face of the Rebel Alliance, the leader, the political leader, I should say, where Leia was the military leader.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you. I think we're going to see a little bit of darkness to her. I think it's just going to be the writers are going to try to be like, look at the surprise. Look what Mon Mothma is actually capable of. And even if you're this prim, proper, wonderful kind of person, when you're in the Rebel Alliance, no matter what role, you have to get your hands dirty. And so I agree with you completely. I think we're going to see something shocking.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's coming. I think, she's going to have to make a choice. Is she going to get found out, or is she going to preserve her secret?
Exactly.
And her daughter's kind of bratty too.
Yes. Yeah, she's a bit of a mouth runner. That's for sure.
Yeah. So I'm scared. Well, I'm not scared for them. I mean, they're not good characters.
Yeah, you're really getting involved in and emotionally invested there, sir.
Let's just say I wouldn't be upset if both of them were short for this world.
Yeah, if they were eliminated.
I know that sounds terrible, but they're not good people.
Exactly.
So what do you think about the entire ground assault team on Aldhani?
I like that there's a history on that planet. If I remember correctly, the Empire had pushed the natives down south. I guess I don't know exactly. I can't remember exactly what it was. Was it just like the Empire seems to try to destroy a lot of planets for natural resources and don't seem to care at all about native populations.
That's exactly correct.
So that was the big thing I got. So these are kind of like, this is just another forming cell of the Rebel Alliance. I like how they are using that to train Cassian on how to infiltrate the Empire.
Right.
At this point, that was really all I could get out of that. I was like I told you, I'm having a hard time with it not feeling like Star Wars piecing everything together.
Right, right. And I like how the 2 episodes so far have really started, have really shown us that just, the crew on Aldhani know each other, and then Cassian being the odd man, they didn't accept him right away, and they really didn't accept him at all in episode 4. He was still the outsider, and it really took a lot of what happened in episode 5 to get them to trust him, to believe him, that he was genuine. It started with his advice to have the left-handed shooter, on the left, so that the gun was on the outside for them, and that was kind of his first step to really gaining acceptance. And then, we see him interact with some of the other characters individually. We see that he recognizes some of the tattoos on Skeen. I think it's Skeen or something like that. Yeah, Skeen. Skeen is his name. He recognizes the crate head tattoo on Skeen's chest, and then he recognizes the hand-like symbol, which both of those are references to the expanded universe as well. The crate head tattoo is, and it kind of looked. Did you see how it kind of looked like it had a barcode?
Yes,
and some numbers. I think he was a slave, and that is something that was big in Star Wars, the Knights of the Old Republic series, and of games and books. Is there was a slave trade on Tatooine, and the hand tattoo is a reference to a couple books written by Timothy Zahn.
Okay.
So I thought those were pretty darn cool, little references, and how, okay, so now that these things are acknowledged in the new Disney canon, we can see more and more content, that people had grown to love about the old EU, and making it all make sense in this new canon. I think, I think it's really cool.
Good. Yeah, I think that's wonderful that they're not forgetting that it ever existed. They could have easily just brushed the whole thing off and said screw it,
right?
But they're at least showing some loyalty, I guess, to the fans who grew up with all those things and felt a special connection with that. So I think that's great. And I will have to depend on you for the expanded universe information and Easter eggs, because I have never read any of the books, because I wasn't a big Star Wars fan until I was 17 or 16.
Yeah.
When the special editions came out. So I got into it late.
Sure.
For all that. So, so you're my guide through that.
I'm not a be all end all of font of knowledge about the old EU, but I did read some stuff, and stuff that I vaguely remember. I might have to get some clarification on by searching the internet, but for the most part, things stand out to me, and then I just go confirm what I think I know, with a few internet searches. But yeah, it's really cool to see how that stuff gets incorporated.
Yes.
Let's talk a little bit about Cyril. We find that he has been fired from his job with the Corpos, and that the Empire has assumed full control of policing after his mishap with Cassian and Luthen. So we see him kind of, showing up at his mom's place. And our first introduction to her is she slaps him right across the face. I love her. I love her character. I love that actress too. She's phenomenal, and just the way that in episode 5, how she was just constantly, she poured Cyril cereal and blue milk, and then just sits across from the table and just makes fun of him, and as he's trying to eat his cereal, poor guy.
Yeah, I know. He just wanted to chill and relax and have a good morning.
And this uncle that the mom keeps referring to and calling in the family favor. I wonder what that's all about.
Yeah, I was wondering the same thing. Is the family involved in some sort of like mob kind of situation, gangster kind of thing? I guess it'd be like space gangsters.
Yeah,
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. What his family is about and what his history is.
Yeah.
I assumed that the reason why he got so obsessed in the previous episodes with getting Cassian was because he had this strong belief in the Empire and has this need for justice. But or maybe it was because of he just wanted some sort of power and to get attention. I don't know. The character is kind of interesting to me, and I'm wondering how he's going to develop as the show goes on.
Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see where it goes. I wonder if maybe we're going to see some more intersection of some of these stories.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if somehow this uncle of theirs is involved with the Empire in some way. You know, maybe he has a connection to the Empire instead of Mafia, or maybe he has a connection to the Rebel Alliance. Who knows?
They're going to end up surprising us somehow.
Right.
With the big reveal of something.
Right. And I mean, we still have to see Saw Gerrera and his involvement in the show, because I know he was teased in the trailers and he was referred to in episode 4, the young guy that was standing watch. He fell asleep standing watch, and Skeen came over and said that, if he was with Saw Gerrera, he'd already be dead.
Right.
Saw wouldn't stand for that, for someone falling asleep on watch. So, we're starting to get that, those hints that he's coming.
Yes.
I don't know. We're kind of running out of time here. We're at the hour mark here. So I know I want to talk about music and sound design and cinematography, but I think maybe let's save that for another day. What do you think?
I think that's a good idea. Let's wait until we see more of the stuff like the Imperial Senate. Again, that's another thing I'm excited about that they showed.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking forward to. I want to see more of the ships, more of the planets, things that are coming up. So, we can actually save that until Andor is done.
I think that's a good idea. We'll go like maybe we'll do like an overall episode, like I don't know, maybe I'll try to get some friends involved and we'll do a roundtable discussion and hit on the show as a whole.
Yes, I think that's a great idea.
Sounds
Something
good.
Special.
All right. So on that note, I think we're going to call it a day on this episode of Captains Logs and Lightsabers. So until next time, if you want to keep the discussion going, you can reach out to us on Twitter. We just recently changed our Twitter handle to something much more manageable. We are now at CLL Pod. We're still Facebook.com/Logs and Lightsabers Pod, Instagram at Logs and Lightsabers, and you can email us at logslightsaberspods@gmail.com. You can also review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. If you listen to any podcasts, you know how important reviews are, and especially with Apple, that's how people discover podcasts and how they appear in search results. The better ratings and the more reviews that they have, all of that helps the Apple Podcast algorithm deliver our show to people who might be interested in our content. If you want to reach out to Geek News Now, you can find our parent organization at GNN_home on Twitter. You can search Geek News Now on Facebook. There's several pages, including some groups that you can join there and get involved. You can also be a guest on our show if you're involved in the Geek News Now community. So if you're interested, follow us, reach out to us. We will bring you on to talk whatever you want to talk about in Star Trek and Star Wars. And you can also keep up with all of the geeky news at www.geeknewsnow.net. Chris, any final words?
Nothing really. I'm really excited about seeing how the rest of Andor develops and how we're going to report on it in the next number of episodes. I'm hoping also to do another full rewatch of everything so I can kind of piece everything in my brain. I hate that it's not gelling with me yet. I just think it's because it's so different.
Yeah.
But if anybody wants to find me, the best way to get in contact with me is emailing me. So you could write Christopher, and then my last name is Stough, STOUGH, LSW@gmail.com.
All right. And as far as me, just email the show, and that's how you'll interact with me, because I kind of do a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff for the show. So just email the show Gmail, and that's how you'll interact with me. Or you can interact with the show socials. That's how you can reach me. So until next time, may that force be with you.
And live long and prosper, everyone.